Okay, so the Browns have gotten through the combine. There has been a ton of news in the past week. We heard from all kinds of people within the front office. The first ever interview with Catherine Reish, which both Bri and I were really excited about. And we found out why we haven't heard from her in so long, which makes a ton of sense. We heard from Andrew Berry. We talked about that last week. We heard from Kevin Stefanski at the combine presser. We also heard from Kevin Stefanski on Barstool podcast, which so
much has happened.
The most in-depth 45 minutes. I don't think he's ever talked for 40. I don't think we've heard him talk 45 minutes since he's been here.
Right.
There was just a lot of good stuff from that stuff, beyond the, a
lot of stuff that was also clearly off top or not allowed to be discussed.
Yeah. But I mean, it was great. He was really comfortable, and he gave you a lot of it was stories from his past, and you sort of forget just how insane the Minnesota Vikings have been over the years and just the amount of situations they've been involved in. Got some interesting stories about him growing up. And then, the stuff I covered was the stuff that, talking about his, his process and stuff he does as a coach, which I was really interested in. But that's all outside of the fact that the combine happened and all the athletic measure testing stuff that went on and medical and all the team interviews and all those things that come out. And then all the rumors that start coming out of the combine as a result. Bri, what sort of stood out to you from this week, or what's sort of the most exciting thing you heard?
Okay. So Pete, I think we last left our podcast episode with me being overly excited about the combine starting. I overpromised and I'm under delivering right now. What'd you say?
There was some boasting that went on.
Yes. I don't know why I did that. I should never do that. I had every intent to spend my days on the couch watching the combine. And I started off strong, Pete. A week ago, in fact, on Thursday, I turned it on in the evening and my kids were still awake. They were actually really into it. The 40-yard dash was going on. I forget what group was up at that point in time.
Defensive line.
Okay. I thought it was tight ends. But my kids were like very into watching each player run, and then their time would come up and then they'd watch the next guy and they'd say, oh, did he beat that time? And then they did a little bit of cone drills. And then my kids also then did the cone drill. So we were into it. And I was like, wow, this is a great start to my evaluation and analysis of the combine and what this means for the Browns. And then Friday rolled around, working from home, didn't put the TV on all day. Think I put the TV on a little bit at night. And again, the 40-yard dash was on. I cannot continue to do the 40-yard dash. I just can't. And then the same thing kind of happened to me on Saturday and Sunday. Every time I turned on the TV, when I had a chance to turn on the TV, I swear to you, the 40-yard dash was going on. And I was just sitting there thinking, if I have to watch one more 40-yard dash, I'm going to lose my mind. So I just really lost interest overall because of that. So I will blame my lack of preparation for the 40-yard dash being on every time I turned on the TV. So I will say, Pete, there were so many other things kind of happening alongside of the combine, though. It is fun to read about the rumors because obviously it's a time where all of the who's who is together in one spot. And obviously we are right around the corner of free agency kicking off, and you have GMs and owners and players that are obviously at the combine. So there's a lot of chatter, and obviously reporters are there to kind of pick up on all these bits and pieces and hear the stories. So I always look forward to that and like the little rumors and tidbits that come out of Indianapolis, even if it's not necessarily about the players. And then obviously we got to hear Catherine speak for the first time. That was pretty amazing and fantastic to hear from her. And then obviously this week we heard from Kevin Stefanski, I want to say unfiltered. Not really unfiltered, but in more of a relaxed setting that I thought was really nice. And I thought overall it's been an exciting couple of weeks.
Yeah. So to your defense on the combine, I don't like the 40. It's not useful. Don't get me wrong. It makes sense as a test. Paul Brown invented the damn thing. It's 40 yards because of special teams. That's fine. But there are drills I'd rather watch. I'd rather watch the 3-cone. 3-cone is a measure of balance and overall agility. and you can get a lot from just seeing how a person moves through it. Now, it's difficult to sort of, the 40-yard dash is very easy to give you instant results. 3-cone is not. That's part of the problem. But there are other drills that are sort of more interesting to watch. The jumps are fine. Those are pretty easy to do quickly. The vertical's fine. Those are easy to do quickly. But yeah, you're watching this thing. It's 6 hours of pop, and it almost, like 50% of it is guys running in a straight line, or in one DB's case, you're swerving to the point where you're knocking cameras down. That, yeah, it's mind numbing in points. To me, I sort of would like contrast it to, if I was to turn on golf, it would be with the intent to fall asleep. The combine is very good at that. You want to take a nap, turn on the combine. It is very good for that. But, you get some stuff out of it. But yeah, I wish that it was more, you could see more of what's going on. And I think it would be more entertaining from that standpoint, because at some point you have to look at yourself if you're watching this, go, what am I doing with my life? If that I put, I'm on hour 23 of watching all this go on, you go, what does this say about me? I'm watching men in tight spandex try to run really fast in a straight line, get angry at themselves or happy with themselves or whatever. Very, very, very interesting. Now, Catherine Reish, we haven't heard from her. She was hired last May. I thought she was great. She was so good. First, being a mother who's very ambitious in her career, and she talked about that and her work-life balance, and I have to imagine, and I said that, to Bri when I sent her the clip, I was like, you're gonna love this. She's you, because it's very easy to relate from somebody who's like wants to be a mom all the time, but also wants to have a fulfilling career and like has these other things you want to achieve, and sort of balancing out your feelings, because there are going to be times where invariably you probably feel guilty at work. And there are going to be times you probably feel guilty when you're at home, because you have all these things you want to do. And there's so many hours in the day, and, or God forbid, you have 2 full-time jobs and you probably get tired at points and you feel like you can't do enough. So I will set you up with that.
Yes. Well, I would also say, just for her too, she's in an industry that is obviously very heavily male dominant. So that also plays a part in, again, just kind of the pressure that comes with it, not only having a very big role and responsibility in what her actual job is, but then also trying to balance that with your home life and then also your career ambitions. When you're in a male dominated industry or surrounded by a bunch of men, even if they have families at home, traditionally their wives or partners are responsible for a lot of the work that happens at home. So there's less pressure on their partner or husband or whoever it is that is working and having that. And that's where I feel like, as a woman, unfortunately for us, typically working moms, there's a lot of pressure to always be on in both places, at home and career. It feels like men are able to kind of turn it on and off, where it doesn't feel like the balance is quite there for women. And that may just be a nature of me personally, because when I'm at home with my kids, I want to be in the present moment. And obviously when I'm at work, I'm also trying to be in the present there as well. But it's very easy to get distracted in both places. But it's tough. It's tough to balance it all and think that you are being successful in both facets of your life. I struggle with that a lot. There are some days where I feel like I'm rocking it as a mom and suffering at work, and vice versa. There are some days at work where I feel like I am just out of it and I'm not able to give my all or my 100%. Actually, tonight is one of those nights, Pete. I tweeted right before coming on the show. It's Thursday night. We usually record on a Tuesday. So this is different. But at the beginning of the week, I feel obviously a lot better just in general about things, because I'm coming off of a weekend. And right now I'm coming off of 3 days working in the office, 1 day working from home. And for whatever reason, my Thursday nights, I'm very overstimulated. And I think my kids are too, to be fair, after being in school for 4 days or daycare, whatever it is. And I get home and one kid's crying. The other kid is refusing to eat their dinner. The other kid is playing on their Nintendo, trying to get everyone to sit down and eat. Multiple meltdowns are happening. And they're all yelling, mommy, mommy, my mom. My husband is standing right there, but it's always mommy. It's always mommy. One wants picked up. The other one still doesn't want to eat. The other one refuses to get off their Nintendo. Sit like fighting these battles all night long. I am just like, I'm tired. It's been a long work week, but I also know that my kids are tired and they need me and I have to still keep it all together. So I went off a tangent. This had nothing to do with Catherine, but I'm sure she probably experiences these same things. And even when you have a supportive partner who is supportive, not only in the role as a parent, but also supportive in being obviously supportive of me in my career, sometimes the kids still just want their mom. And there's nothing that he could do to take that stress away from me because it's just how things sometimes go. So that felt good getting that off my chest. But anyway, we're recording tonight on a Thursday, and I'm usually not this overstimulated, but tonight I am, Pete. So
that was good.
We are.
Now, to me, I think part of the reason that the Browns hired Catherine Reish, obviously there was a pre-existing relationship with Reish and Andrew Berry. Andrew Berry was her supervisor with the Eagles. I did not know that until she said it.
Which she talked about it.
But I imagine part of the reason Andrew Berry was perfectly happy to hire her is because he's married to a career mother in his wife they've got three kids.
Yeah, they have 3. I think their youngest is about to turn 3, actually.
So I don't think Andrew Berry is sitting there going home to his wife and saying she's probably not great at work because she's got to take care of these kids. Like, he knows that Britton can be great as a mom and be great at her job. And
we will have to get her on the show, by the way. I have to reach out to her. I would love to pick her brain on that.
But yeah, and likewise, I have to imagine he understands that, like, that also means that he has to get home and do his part.
Right.
Or all those things, so I think that probably makes it very easy for him, or informs him quite a bit on what Catherine Reish can bring to the organization. Now, the one thing as a selfish Browns fan, I thought was when she mentioned that this is her first baby. So my immediate reaction is, all right, how many more are you planning to have? And how long are you going to plan to have them? Does this mean you're going to be sticking with the Browns for a little while before you have them all, before you try to take a GM job? Or how's that all going to work? Now, from there, she pivoted really naturally to just normal Brown stuff. She was great on all that. Like I said, I think she just handled everything really well. She did get the questions that you and I have talked about, knowing she was going to get with Deshaun Watson and her comfort level. She would not go down the hypothetical rabbit hole with it. She just said that was part of her decision-making process of taking the job, and that she was comfortable with what the team did. She said the only thing she could really say, as far as I'm concerned, and she didn't answer it in a way that felt inauthentic. I think she was as honest and authentic as she could be to those things. So I was interested in that. She was very polite to certain people who asked questions, with sort of a sly intent about analytics and some other things. But she was great. I've been excited to hear from her since she got hired, because I looked at her resume. She's ridiculously qualified to do most anything.
Mm-hmm.
She speaks 3 languages. She's been all over the place. She's French Canadian. I did not realize, like, it's weird because you think Canada, you think, on some level, everybody's into hockey. And she's like, no, we were just a football family from the word go.
Yeah, that was wild to me. It was a whole family thing. They were a football family. I was like, wow, I would not have expected that at all.
Which makes us both sound a little ignorant, but that's fine. It was fun to learn that.
Yeah, obviously she has to be a football fan, right? Considering she got into the career.
And then, so she's been, her career has been really impressive. She's super young. So, I thought she was great.
Yeah, I think the other thing that she touched on, too, with having that previous relationship with Andrew in Philadelphia, obviously, and then she jumped at the opportunity to go work with him again in Cleveland. I think says a lot. I know we've talked about this, Pete, in our previous podcast, just about, I do think there are people that want to work for the organization based on who they have in the building, who they have calling the shots at the leader in these leadership positions. And there are players that now want to play for this football team where in the past it didn't necessarily feel like the Browns held this same aura about them. And I believe I don't know who this report came from. It was one of those like little nuggets of like bullet points. I want to give the reporter credit, whoever was there and hearing things. Talked about how Kevin Stefanski specifically was a coach that players wanted to play for.
You probably are referencing, multiple reporters have mentioned this. I know Jared Mueller was very quick.
Yes, it was Jared. Thank you.
Yeah, he did a great job getting that out pretty quickly. But yeah, go ahead.
So I was just going to say, for Catherine, I've been in this situation before in my own career where someone gave me the advice early on in my career that said, if you have the opportunity to choose your boss or who your leader is, jump at that opportunity. Because in most cases, you either interview for a position and you are in need of a job, you're not going to know who your boss is. You're obviously going to know what company you're interviewing for, but a lot of times you don't know how your boss is going to be, or how, the vice president or director, whatever that leadership role is. If you ever have the opportunity to pick who you report to or which leadership umbrella you fall into, you should take that opportunity. And that's been some of the best advice I've ever gotten, where I have had the opportunity to choose a role where I know who my boss will be. And I will say, I 100% agree that people that I have looked up to, I have had the honor to report into them, or at least under their umbrella. And I've loved every minute of that. And I feel like that is kind of what I gathered from her as well, with everything that she learned while working with Andrew Berry. She kind of jumped at that same chance to go be with him again and work with him. And obviously she has the utmost respect for him. And he seems to be, again, a very like servant leader, where he empowers the people underneath him to make decisions, to own specific different parts of their job. He respects their opinions. I mean, those are the type of people that you want to work for. So that was really what I took away from the whole thing. Is obviously she was very focused on the now and her current job and her current position. She clearly has a very bright future and will probably someday be a general manager of a football team, but she didn't seem to be hyper focused on that. Like, of course, it's a goal of hers, but she's taking the opportunity that she has, and she is obviously taking the most out of it in the real time now and learning from Andrew Berry. And obviously that will shape her future and whatever that role may be. But I thought that was really, she didn't say that out loud necessarily, of like all these things I'm saying, but if you could take one thing away, like I would say follow in her footsteps if you ever have the chance to do that.
My immediate impression with how she came across was, she knows exactly how good she is. She knows exactly how valuable she is. So she's not willing to compromise on, what that means in terms of like with her as a mother, with her work-life balance. Like, she's going to tell you straight up, this is what I can do. This is what I need you to do. If that's a good fit, I'm going to be great for you. If not, I'll be fine. Like that is, which I think is also very, easier said than done. She's very, I think she's confident in the best way.
That's something that you would hear from a man, to be quite frank.
Right.
Like that, you're typically used to hearing that from a man in the industry, but women typically are not that direct or upfront, or if they are, they're typically criticized for it. Yeah.
So she's pretty powerful. So yeah, I thought she was great. We heard from Andrew Berry, nothing super surprising from him. Although the only thing that I found interesting is on 2 different occasions, he's tried to downplay the concept of an age guardrail, which fine. Maybe maybe we put too much into it, but if you go off your drafts, including when you were helping out Sashi Brown and you were basically telling him who to pick, this is what you do. This is who you are. Age is very important. And it wouldn't surprise me if the Browns are more flexible with age, but not in the first 2 days. They're going to keep drafting young players early. And, the thought process and the way he addressed it was saying that older players don't necessarily have a lower ceiling any more than younger players necessarily have a higher one. The way I sort of look at it, and you based on what the Browns have done, just because you're younger doesn't mean you're necessarily less prepared than an older player. And the evidence is in what they've gotten out of their young players. And obviously this is, tilted a little bit because, these are guys, usually they're picking earlier in the draft. So they're more talented theoretically. So they field faster, but they have not been unprepared. Even if we have qualms with Jedrick Wills, to say the least, but whether it's Greg Newsome, whether it's Martin Emerson Jr., whether it's JOK, whether it's Grant Delpit, even Donovan Peoples-Jones, he was picked in the 6th round. He was barely 20. I mean, he was 20 still when they drafted him, and he contributed as a rookie. So that's my counterpoint to that is, just because they're older doesn't mean they are necessarily going to be good immediately. Theoretically, you would hope they're closer to at least their floor if they haven't reached their ceiling yet, which is fine. So, because a lot of these people there are a lot of people suggesting that, well, the Browns should draft older now because they're better, when it's the opposite. They should have drafted guys who were ready to play when they were terrible because they needed them to play, as opposed to now when you're theoretically good, you don't need rookies to play right now. Andrew Berry continues to say that the draft is about amassing talent. He keeps referring to it as approaching the team as if it's like an expansion team, which suggests he's more interested in talent and not necessarily trying to get guys on the field right now. So I don't expect their overall approach to change. When it comes to day 3, those picks, I could see them being more flexible. We are still in that sort of wave of COVID players. We've got some guys who are 24, approaching 25. That could be a factor. I know I highlighted a player that I thought would be interesting. City Sao, I think is how his name is pronounced. And the reason I noticed him is because, well, somebody sent me his athletic profile and was like, draft him. And then I looked up who he was. He played at Eastern Michigan. He was a left tackle. He's going to be 25 at some point soon, I think in June. He is from Quebec, the province, not the city in this case, as Catherine Reish is from Quebec City, I believe. He's from Bromont, which is southeast of Montreal, but nevertheless, he's a French-Canadian kid. And Catherine Reish talked about how, being able to speak other languages may be able to sort of help build a bond. She mentioned Matthew Bergeron, who I didn't realize was a French speaker. Makes sense. But so if a guy like City Sao ends up going undrafted, I'm curious to see if that little bit, in addition to things like potentially playing for Bill Callahan and other things, might sort of help the Browns recruit a player like that. He tested really, really well, has played a ton of football. He's being projected to play guard. But nevertheless, anyway, that's sort of one of those things where I'm curious to see if that amounts to anything, that little bit of extra gives the Browns a little advantage when it comes to trying to get a player like that. If when we get to those undrafted free agents and those long shot guys, if that's a guy who ends up on the team.
Yeah, it certainly feels like that is definitely a possibility. So, Pete, can I ask you, just since I slacked on the combine situation, you did text me. You did try to prepare me as much as possible to give me some of the players, well, I guess some of the groups that I was interested in that I didn't catch a single thing of because I, for some reason, only tuned in when offensive linemen were running their 40-yard dash. Anyone surprise you, I guess, coming out of the combine as a potential fit for the Browns, or like who's your favorite? Like, are we still thinking our biggest needs are defensive line, edge? I think I saw you tweeting about cornerbacks quite a bit, which I didn't have on my radar, Pete.
Well, taking a holistic approach one of the things you go into the combine and you're like, you have some sort of beliefs on where you think position groups rank. The combine is a really good way to sort of crystallize those position groups. You mentioned cornerbacks. Cornerbacks were outstanding, and this was a strong cornerback class coming into this. But like DJ Turner from Michigan, Julius Brents from Kansas State, these are guys who are ranked to go on day 3, and they were 2 of the most athletic corners in the draft. And I don't think they're going to suddenly go day 1 or day 2. They're just that much talent, and by virtue of that, I think it would be, it's, if you just look at it from like, big picture, where do you want to draft from? I probably want to draft from where the positions are of strength. That doesn't mean, the value may not hit where positions may be weaker and you just find the right fit. But if I just want to hit positions of strength, corner is a really strong group. We've got this lingering conversation, and, I try not to pay too much attention to it because ultimately I think, whoever says they want to play slot, I don't really care. Ultimately, I think when it comes down to, would you rather be on the bench or would you rather be in the game? I think ultimately they're going to say, yeah, I want to be in the game. But nevertheless, if the Browns find a really good slot-based corner, I think this is a great draft to hit that type of position in. So that's where that sort of came out of. Defensive line, edge in particular, which is boom, perfect for what the Browns do. And this is regardless of free agency. I think my theory of the case is the only way the Browns are going to get a long-term answer across from Myles Garrett is either draft for it or trade it. And either way, you're probably giving up draft picks. So to me, that still becomes the most logical course of action. I think the value is going to be there. And not all the guys I like tested much. Felix Enedike Uzama from Kansas State didn't test at all. I don't think he may have jumped. I know BJ Ojulari of LSU jumped. And then the guy who jumped out, who if you want to say a guy who sort of has my full attention at this point is Adi Tamiwa Adebawore from Northwestern. He tested freakishly athletic. He is short, but has super long arms. He ran a 4.5 at 282 pounds, jumps, all that stuff. His 10-yard dash. 10-yard traditionally to me is not a great indicator. I think it's variable in some ways. I think it's a pretty good gauge of your get off, but I think it's one of those things you can it can be inconsistent in testing. I think the broad jump is better in terms of just measuring your all explosive. Nevertheless, his 10-yard dash was as fast as Will Anderson, the defensive end from Alabama, who's the best defensive end in the class. So for a lot of people, he probably comes out of nowhere. You go, why haven't I heard more about him? He was great at the Senior Bowl, but even going back on tape when he was at Northwestern, he was ruthless against Ohio State. Just terrorized them in terms of just power off the snap and his pursuit. He's so fast chasing guys around that because he tested so athletic, and you look at Jim Schwartz and you go, well, I mean, is there any reason he can't play that wide 9? And suddenly you have these 2 giant freaks off the edge between him and Myles Garrett, that suddenly that has my attention. He's rawer than some of the other guys. I think Ojulari and Eduke Uzama are more pure 9 technique edge players, but I mean, I have to imagine Jim Schwartz, at least in part, is going 282 pounds, and I can wide out that wide. He's played a ton at the 5. He's played a ton at the 3. So he gives you a lot of that stuff. I think in some ways you look at him as a heavier, shorter, more functional Jadeveon Clowney, hopefully. And, that would be very tempting. Yeah. Let me think. Running back group is great. Unfortunately, none of them did anything. So not much there. I have major questions about wide receivers. The testing did nothing to help me on that. In fact, there are a lot of people who have been pushing for this idea of taking a wide receiver at 42. Short of somebody falling super unexpectedly like Jackson Smith and Jigba, and I don't see it happening.
I would love that. I would kill for that.
Well, unfortunately, he tested out of this world.
I know.
Oh, well, now we know that.
I did know that. Listen, I did stay up to date with some of my Buckeye guys, which
he crushed what he did.
I mean, listen, he'll probably go to a rival team. Like that's what always happens, it seems.
The team that continuously gets linked with him is the Bears.
Interesting.
Because they got nothing. They got nothing. And, if Justin Fields is their guy, they need all the help in the world. And it would be great for that. But there have been a lot of guys pushed with the Browns, like Jalen Hyatt of Tennessee, Tyler Scott of Cincinnati, who incidentally, I played, our high school team played his. It did not go well for Tyler Scott. Great kid, but there are so many holes in his resume. And what I mean by that, when I say there are holes in his resume, he had a pretty good season at Cincinnati this past year, but it wasn't great. They didn't play anybody really. Like his best game was against a 7-6 Arkansas team. He did not play well against Tulane, which was the big game for them. Going back to last year when they had Desmond Ridder, he caught 0 balls against Notre Dame, which is a big game for them, and they beat Notre Dame. And then he jumped super well, like 41-inch vertical, 11-foot, 1-inch broad jumper. They're both phenomenal. But he has an extensive track background. And then you get to the track portion of this thing, and he runs a 4.51 when he came in saying he was going to run mid 4.2s. And then he came back and ran a 4.41, which is fine. It's not bad by any stretch, but it's not 4.2. And like, that's part of the problem is like so much of what was built into him was based on this. And I fully expect he will go to Cincinnati's pro day. And I suspect he will try to run again, and maybe he will do much better, and great for him. But you start to add up these things. You're like, well, he didn't do this, and he didn't really meet the expectation here. You match all these things up. And then the other part of that is that other receivers who are projected to go later than him did much better. Marvin Mims of Oklahoma is like, to me, is this most underrated guy in the draft right now, because he's constantly regarded as this 3rd, 4th round pick. He was more productive than most of the receivers in this class, and he ran a 4.38 and dominated everything else. He continues to check boxes, and people, are not as high on him. The kid from from Nebraska ran a 4.33, and he did it, I think, 190 pounds, and he's 6 foot, and has experience on special teams. Like, to me, so to the argument to me at that point is, I'm perfectly happy to go get a more premium, not that wide receiver is not premium, the Browns view it as a premium position, but I'm more inclined to go grab that defensive end at 42 and then come back at 98 or 111 or whatever, and then grab a receiver there. I'm probably not going to lose on talent. And the one thing this receiver class has is a ton of guys who run really, really fast. So if the Browns are still determined to do that, they're not going to lose anything from that. It's, maybe there's a slight drop off in talent, but I don't think it's dramatic enough that you're suddenly going to go, man, we have to do this. So that's sort of my early read on, strength and guys that sort of jump out at you that I think fit the Browns.
And we're 1 week away from free agency kicking off. Is that right?
We are 6 days. Yes.
6 days. Wednesday. I actually think that's going to be wild, just based on like some of the things that have been circulating over the last 2 days. Like, what are some of these teams doing? Like, I know that there's like a lot of conversation just in regards to the Browns with cap space and like how much are the Browns really going to have to spend. And I saw Mary Kay put out a couple of names that are on the Browns radar. But, when those things come out, Pete, I feel like from a fan perspective, fans like jump at the idea that we're going to be able to sign all of them and then also like draft all of these players too. Like, what is realistic at this point? Like, when we think about free agency and like how much are we going to have to spend when it comes to signing, big names? I'm saying big, like in quotations, in terms of like being able to fill our needs and our gaps there as well.
So this is where it gets tricky, because the Browns can theoretically free up to like $98 million worth of cap space if they want to. They're not going to, but they could. The thing I stress is that the Browns are looking at this as a 4-year window. So they're not likely to blow it all now on this year. If anything, I don't know. Look, the Browns are going to contend for this year. Clearly, there's a lot riding on the line for those guys in that building. And even though I'm curious on your thought on this, do the Browns in any way feel like a team that feels like anyone's on the hot seat?
Actually, as this week happened, I would say no, unless something, I don't even want to use this expression because I'm right down the street, unless the train fell off the tracks,
Right.
like for the season.
Now, look, if you know, if we're talking, if they're 3-7,
Yeah.
the pressure is going to ramp up
Potentially,
immensely.
yes.
But right now, it feels super stable, and everybody's acting as if they are particularly the front office. I don't think Andrew Barry's going anywhere anytime soon.
And the fact that Kevin Stefanski is like on a PR public, it's weird. It's like he's like an actor and actress like promoting a movie right now. He's like on all of these circuits.
Well, that was our advice.
Well, and I don't disagree, but I feel like this is the Browns putting him out there to kind of get these, like the Browns fans. There's obviously like a very angry mob of Browns fans that just can't stand Kevin Stefanski and wanted him gone and all this stuff and don't think he's good, whatever. I feel like they're putting him out there to say, hey, this is our guy. Like, he's here. Like, we support him fully. Like, get used to him and like him.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And I do think a lot of this is what we talked about initially, is the Browns are tired of having other people talk for him. Or Andrew Barry. I think Andrew Barry's in that too. They're tired of having people talk for the organization, tell other people what they're doing, and often twist what they're doing.
Yeah.
This weird thing, like you get into these weird headspaces where people are like convinced that like Paul DePodesta is some evil
puppet master. Yeah.
Yes. It just doesn't make any sense. So you're seeing Kevin Stefanski out there speaking for himself, and I think it's helping him. Every time I texted you this, and we talk about this, and it's like every time these guys talk, I think they help themselves because they are really good at advocating for themselves.
I agree.
In terms of just like speaking common sense and talking away where you even if you are sitting there and looking the past 2 years and going, this has not been good. Like, you got to show me something. I think he's at least going to be able to talk some people into, okay, show me, as opposed to this, we're wasting our time. We're wasting a season. Anyway, back to what you originally asked me. What's realistic? To me, I look at this as some of this is going to come down to what the Browns can sort of project to be realistic. So, like, let's say Jesse Bates, Javon Hargrave, and Levante David all walk into the Browns building and go, yeah, we want to play here. Are the Browns going to free up a little bit more money to make all those guys work if the numbers are, if the numbers work in terms of like contracts and stuff? Yeah, I think they'll make those things work. But ultimately, I imagine that the Browns sort of have, when it comes to those sort of the big ticket items, they're hoping to get one. And then they will sort of shrink the budget around whatever, around other positions. And that doesn't mean it's bad. It just means they've got 5 holes to address. If they put, let's say, $18 million a year into Javon Hargrave to play that 3, which would be great, they're probably not going to spend a boatload of money on free safety, for example. Let's say it's $35 million. That's a guess. If you spend 18 on Javon Hargrave, you've got 17 for the rest. It probably going to end up being a little bit more than that, but regardless, that's sort of a way to do it. So I think it really just, like, clearly the Browns have organized and strategized to say these, we've got priorities in A, B, and C. And, this part of the combine that the NFL doesn't really want to acknowledge, but is true, is agents are talking to teams. And even though they are talking to teams about things that are already going on their teams or players, like the Browns have every reason to talk to David Mugoleta because he's Deshaun Watson's free agent, but he's also Jesse Bates' agent. And you can sort of lay some groundwork in determining what is a realistic possibility and what is not. Javon Hargrave, for example, not going to end up back in the Eagles. He loves Jim Schwartz. I don't have an obvious other place for him to go, so that may be realistic. He's very, very good. I have to believe he's got to be like the top guy. In part because that 3 technique position, not only is it theoretically very good for Jim Schwartz to not lock down, but you get down after him, and it's like Sheldon Rankins and David, whatever his name is in the Saints that I don't feel like looking up or pronouncing, or re-signing Taven Bryan, or some of these other guys. You go from, the top tier guy to C's and guys who played on really successful defensive lines, and maybe you're getting the third or fourth best guy. Maybe that could be a big enough difference that the Browns make a big push for him and then sort of work their budget around it. And again, they're going to address all those needs, and then they can adapt their draft strategy depending on how good they feel about it. So much of this is going to depend on what the feedback the Browns get in terms of how much money they're willing to do it. And let's say that, they sign somebody for, a 3-year deal or a 4-year deal. Well, then they can do some of the things they've been doing with some of their other guys, where they pay them nothing the first year to maximize cap space and push it down the road and keep rolling over that cap space. They may get into that. I nobody stands out to me as a guy that's going to get that long of a contract, but maybe Javon Hargrave would, entirely for bookkeeping purposes, where you get into void years and all that nonsense, where you're like, he signed for about 17 void years, so we can really send that money down the road and not have to worry about it. So I can give you, that's my general feel of it, but as much as I can talk like this is how I feel like it's gonna happen, it's the Wild West, really. I'm as curious as you are to see what this is going to look like when it all said and done, because the impression everybody has is the Browns are going to be super aggressive. What does that really mean? We shall see. But what did they do last year? They traded for Deshaun Watson and Amari Cooper. What did they do the year before that? Well, they signed, or in years past, they got Austin Hooper and Jack Conklin. Like, they have gotten dudes quickly. So I'm curious to see, what does that look like this year? Are we going to have, those big guys they get on this? And if let's say they do get a Javon Hargrave, does that suddenly make a bunch of other guys go, holy shit, what's going on in Cleveland? I want in on this. Like, the one thing, and I've talked about this, and I've had people go, that's not true. Deshaun Watson makes people want to play here. It just does. There's a lot of belief in him. He's popular in the league, even if, people have every reason to be skeptical of him as a person. If they like the coaching staff, they like all these other things. There's a lot of things going on in Cleveland. And the one thing that you had to know was going to happen, and I don't think people really appreciated, was that you had about all these teams that pushed all their chips in the middle, then failed, and now they're all blowing it up. Minnesota Vikings are blowing up are cutting a whole bunch of their guys. The Rams have said, screw it. If it ain't nailed down, take it. The Bucs are like, everybody's gone. The Ravens may be a completely different team next year, depending on what happens with Lamar Jackson. There's a lot of teams like that. And all of a sudden, that all these teams that spent all their money, particularly in the AFC West, where they all maxed out their credit cards essentially to try to beat the Chiefs and then all failed miserably, they may not have the wiggle room that the Browns do now. And now the Browns may be able to get a bunch of guys who are looking for a place they could potentially win a championship, get decent money, but then may not get quite as much just because there aren't as many teams out there to contend. Like, does Levante David want to go play with the Bears because they can pay an obscene amount of money even though they're not going to win? I don't think he does. Does that mean he's going to end up in Cleveland? Who knows? But these are all factors that sort of at least get the Browns at the table with a pretty sizable stack of chips.
What I find interesting about all of this is that I feel like when the Browns made the trade for Deshaun a year ago, and obviously the fully guaranteed contract conversation came up a lot, and feels like the narrative around the league, at least from like other fan perspective, is that the Browns are pretty much dead in the water. And that's not the case at all. Andrew, in any year actually, has been really good about restructuring contracts, being able to free up money and cap space in order to go sign players. He's very smart and knowledgeable on how to work around that. And as you mentioned, some of these teams who obviously are farther away than they would have thought, or maybe went all in a year or so ago, are now finding themselves in a situation that is less than ideal and are willing to give up a lot of things, obviously, to start the rebuilding process, whatever you want to call it. And now I feel like the Browns actually are in a spot where they do have options, but they also are a destination in a sense of they have really good players in place to be able to compete and to be able to win. And so if I am a player, I would have to consider that. And obviously that is probably a big part of why they went and got Deshaun Watson, even though he obviously only played 6 games and there was all of the off the field stuff that went down that obviously was very controversial at the time. But now a year later, we are practically almost exactly a year later after all of that. I would say the Browns find themselves in a very different situation than they were in last year. And even so, because last year they had no idea when he was going to play. Like that was obviously still outstanding for months. And right now, if I am in the Browns organization, I'd be feeling pretty good just about how things are going or how they are feeling like things are going to be going. And then obviously having the certainty of having Deshaun obviously for the full season this year. So it's going to be interesting. I feel like obviously all the stuff that's happening currently with Lamar and the Ravens and that whole situation. And then, I don't know, like, I feel like I'm just like reading these other fan bases who, were 6 months ago, 8 months ago, just being extremely critical of the Browns and how the Browns signed this contract and essentially killed themselves. And there's going to be no coming back from it. I don't think they're saying that anymore.
Well, there are a lot of people who don't understand how the cap works. And even if they do, they typically, and I'm in this camp. I only really know the Browns cap situation.
Oh yeah. I don't even know if I know that. It's complicated.
You get a lot of tourists who come in and go, "Oh, the Browns are screwed." And
yeah.
And we've been dealing with this for months, trying to explain, no, they're actually fine. They sort of planned for this. They've been planning for this since 2016 with a 2-year splurge by a drunken sailor that they sort of had to go back and fix. Nevertheless, they've been manipulating the cap to get, they have the largest adjusted cap of anyone in the league because they've been manipulating that rollover and taking all your unspent money and rolling it over for years and years and years. They have the highest adjusted cap of anyone in the league. That is not by accident. They've been doing this specifically. Right. Yeah, but what the turn from Jimmy Haslam, world's greatest monster, into Jimmy Haslam, champion of the people, has been an interesting one.
I honestly, Pete, I'm like very confused, I guess, because I'm sitting here thinking like, did Jimmy Haslam like go from being the worst owner ever to now being like, wow, did he devise this plan all along where he's like pretty much ruining the NFL by guaranteeing this contract, and now all of these owners are up against a situation where they don't want to do the same thing, and players are like, no, like I'm not going to take anything less, or like they want to obviously go get what they think that they deserve. I find it fascinating. I feel like Jimmy Haslam is up in his like little tower, like looking down at all of the peasants that are just fighting with each other.
Yeah, he's a pariah among owners. They do not like him.
My goodness.
It's interesting, but I don't know if they realized it at the time. I expect Andrew Berry did. I don't know if Jimmy Haslam realized at the time. I think Jimmy Haslam just thought to himself, "I'm really rich. I can easily put away. I can easily put $200 million in escrow and not think about it again and not worry about it." That this is what happened. And what's funny, like Jason LaCanfora, who's a smart guy, tweeted out one of the strangest tweets that involves time travel and some other things to work out the way he intended. And I understand what he's trying to say, which is, in essence, he's saying, well, the Browns would have been so much smarter if they had just waited a year and just signed Lamar, got a, in his words, better quarterback. That's debatable. And better person. I'm not going to argue that one. And all these other things, rather than getting Deshaun Watson, which sort of ignores the fact that that Lamar Jackson's contract allegedly would have been done if not for Deshaun Watson getting the guaranteed contract. So it's, because everything else about this, the Ravens have, all reports are that the Ravens are offering him a top quarterback contract in a more traditional sense. and that he wants to get the fully guaranteed contract. Does that happen if not for Deshaun Watson? I don't know. So it's the whole thing is breaking a lot of brains. So there are still people happy to take pot shots at Jimmy Haslam and rewarding Deshaun Watson. And, there's some merit to that. But you get into this whole, Lamar Jackson thing and people are talking about collusion and all this other stuff. I'm not there yet because ultimately I think somebody's going to come to the realization that all these other teams are going to sit back and let me get him. I want to win. If I feel like if I feel like I'm Lamar Jackson away from winning a championship, I'm gonna pony up as much as needed to get him to do it. And so what? Like that's ultimately what came to Jimmy Haslam. It was, I want to win. I have the means to do this. If this gives me a competitive advantage, great. And everybody else can suck it. I think at some point an owner is going to do that in this case. I don't know who, and I don't know when that's going to happen, but that's what's interesting to me. Like the part that I was thinking about was, there are a bunch of teams that can't, get in on bargaining with him until after the draft because they don't have a first round pick this year. But the team that totally would be interesting, and I could totally see doing, is the San Francisco 49ers. They'd have to wait. But what else do they need to do? They've got everything else locked up. If they can get Lamar Jackson for, they essentially signed him to that same contract the Browns did, where they're paying him like, $10 million that first year, or whatever it is, and they go in a Super Bowl. Are they really going to be sitting there going, I wish we hadn't guaranteed him all this money? So, it's the same thing with the Rams. Like unconventional, maybe it worked. They traded all those picks and they now they're paying the price for it, but they won the Super Bowl. I think that competitive element is going to enter the equation before we get to a point where we're in a collusion situation. And I don't buy the idea that 30 owners got together, because obviously the Packers don't have one in the traditional sense. Or at 31 owners, if you include the Ravens, 30 without Jimmy Haslam, and 29 other teams got together and said, we're not doing this because we're not going to follow Jimmy Haslam's pattern. But like, ultimately, this is where this thing's going. It's just a matter of time until we get there. I think there's a real conversation to be had about the risks inherent with Lamar Jackson. He hasn't finished the last two seasons. His MVP season was in 2019. 2020 was very good. The last 2 years weren't. And Cam Newton, was basically done at 30, and that might be generous. Lamar's 26. Is he going to be able to sustain? Lamar is a better passer, but there's no getting away from how much of his game is predicated on being the most athletic player on the field. And if he's not that, what happens? And maybe, if he goes to a team like the 49ers, then he doesn't have to be, and he can do other things. But there's still a major reason you want Lamar Jackson, is because at some point you want him to pull the ball down and run it for God only knows how far to win. If he can't do that, his value decreases immensely. So I think there's a valid risk reward discussion on that front. Let's put this. Would you want to sign Lamar Jackson for a guaranteed full contract? If you're, when you own a team, would you want to sign a 4 or 5 year deal fully guaranteed with Lamar Jackson?
I don't know. I mean, I guess I think about it in a way that there have been other quarterback signings that have been like head scratching that I'm like, okay, well, why not take a risk on Lamar? I mean, I don't know. I'm like, at this point, I feel like the NFL has moved away from thinking that the quarterback needs to be there for 10 years, and teams are willing to essentially draft a guy and move on quickly if it doesn't look like that's working out, or sign a guy and then you take it's all gamble. I mean, I think I would.
There's certainly that element that we've seen any number of teams dump quarterbacks in huge guaranteed amounts of money and just said, screw it, we're going to eat it and move on. So that may be the way it ends up going. Kevin Stefanski's interview. The most interesting part of that for me was him going through the Jets' loss aftermath. Yes. That was the most revealing he's ever been personally, win or lose, of like his process. I'm not surprised with anything he said, but I do think it was very interesting because he's always very, very cognizant of what he represents. Mm-hmm. He's never thinking about it in terms of, it's just me. He's always thinking about it in terms of, I have to properly message. I have to project where I want this to go. And I thought that whole discourse was really enlightening and interesting. And hopefully a lot of people listen to that and sort of got something out of that.
Yeah, I feel like it wasn't surprising to me either, because he came off as the same person that he comes off of in press conferences and any other time we've heard him talk in an interview setting. He's himself, and he talked about the importance of remaining calm and being calm and having to go in front of a team who is also extremely disappointed. Doesn't mean that Kevin Stefanski lacks emotion or lacks feeling. He just explained his thought process of, they're going to emulate how I am and how I respond and how I react. It's okay to have feelings. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to be mad about it or disappointed or let down. But at the end of the day, like, you have to, like, the coach speak, you have to like flush it. So he wants to be that even keeled person. And he also reiterated kind of that same mindset of when he's on the field calling plays, having that same calmness about him, not getting too high or too low, because he was like, when you are needing to make decisions, you're going to make your best decisions when you're not like you want to make those decisions when you're calm, not when you are flustered or frazzled, because you do have to make very quick decisions. And I thought that was very enlightening, that people probably don't think about. If you just think about your own day-to-day life, it's never great to make a big decision when you're not in the right mindset, right? Like, you don't want to make a decision or overreact or underreact to something if you're not in the right mental space. So I thought that was also just very enlightening and just kind of telling of who he is. And he also touched on, Pete, like going back to when he was sidelined for the playoff game in 2020, and how he said it was more stressful being in the basement watching the game unfold versus being in the moment, and how he didn't even like realize like it's actually less stressful to be in the moment and in control of the situation and making those decisions versus sitting and watching it all unfold, which obviously is how we all feel as fans, right? Because it's really easy to sit back and be, the armchair quarterback and think that everything should be done differently. But he's obviously in the moment and really thrives off of, those types of situations and decisions. And I thought he came across just very smart when they were asking him specific situations and like, what would you do if this happened? What would you do? I mean, he had an answer of exactly what he would do. And he definitely erred on the side of being aggressive, which is what we talked about.
Yeah. Well, that the idea of it, from my standpoint, as somebody who coaches, it is 100% more nerve-wracking to watch the Browns than coach. No question.
Yeah.
I can completely relate to that. What I thought is interesting is every time he answers something like that, he pivots into something he does as a coach or his thought process or whatever. So in that case, he's talking about, that playoff game. He talked about, well, I'm available all week. And then he goes, tells Alex Van Pelt, he goes, don't call the game as if I'm watching over you.
Yeah. Yep.
Do this your way. He's talked about being an empowerment guy, and that's a good example of that. But in the same way, the Jets thing, he goes, but I was really proud of our guys, the way they responded the next week beating the Steelers.
Yeah.
He's always got sort of I guess you can call it cheesy in some ways, because I guess it is on this, but it's the way he does it, it doesn't come off that way.
Yeah.
That he's always got sort of a life lesson or a moral to the story.
He's like a parent, like a dad. It's like Full House. Kevin Stefanski is like Full House.
It was funny that they started the interview basically punching him in the face.
Yeah.
And he's a very good sport. He sort of rolled with the punches and got a few of his own, even though they were largely against straw men that were sort of representing like people screaming from the stands or whatever about what he should do. Again, very relatable. The idea that like everybody wants me to run the ball.
I loved when he said, like, probably my favorite part was when they brought up if Nick Chubb touches the ball more than 20 times, you're guaranteed to win. And he said, well, we should just start one of our games with Nick Chubb getting 24 straight carries.
That was awesome.
That was pretty good.
But yeah, like even some of the even when they gave him, they were just throwing cliches either or at him. Some of his answers. So like to your point, he, was it throw the rock or run the ball or whatever in some of the stuff. And he gets into this whole thing about references play action. And talking about you don't really need to run the ball to have an effective play action. And the funny thing, this is true, although it sort of depends how you do it. But the easiest cheat to that is every time you really want to run a play action and make sure the linebackers score it, the answer is always pull a guard. That's it. Always pull a guard. They can't help themselves if you pull a guard. But yeah, the aggressiveness stuff, I thought it was great how they referenced that Packers NFC Championship game, and they get, no game in particular, no championship game in particular, no NFC Championship game in particular. Yeah. 4th and 8 from the 8. But yeah, take your shots. You have to take your shot, and sort of being able to take a very specific example and sort of being able to make a larger point and he said this any number of times. I want to trust in our guys. And you hear that from the players. They like that.
Yeah.
And the thing I try to relate to people is like, when the Browns don't make a 4th down call, it is an absolute gut punch to you as a fan. It's not to them, because this is who they are. This is what they do. Mm-hmm. They want the opportunity to go and make that play. And yeah, they're not happy when it doesn't happen, but they're not sitting there going, oh, the game is over, or I wish we would have kicked the field goal. It's, we got to make the play. We'll make the next one. And like, that is something that heading into year 4, that's their DNA at this point. That is just who they are. And they're not going to change that element of it. And they're going to continue to be more aggressive. I did find it funny that the dude got his daughter's name wrong in trying to push multiple dogs on the Stefanski household, and Kevin Stefanski pleading that his son is allergic. Yeah. Before admitting that his daughter is absolutely his favorite. And then sort of compromising that once the son goes off to college, his daughter will get maybe 2 dogs.
Dog. Yes. Yeah, I thought it was good overall. I thought it was good, good publicity for him. And it was funny. I went on Brown's Reddit just to see. I knew that they would have it posted and people would share their opinions, and I had to laugh because it was very favorable for Kevin in terms of everyone liking the interview. And someone had commented, this coming from like the same group of people who wanted Kevin fired like literally 2 months ago, and now everyone like loves him in all of these responses. And I was like, well, obviously it worked then, because that's probably the goal of all of this in one way. The
last thing, and I knew what the answer was going to be before he said it. Worst play call. You knew it was going to be Amari Cooper's pass. And his reference to,
they called it Michael Myers.
Yes. Right? Yes. He goes, we probably shouldn't call our trick plays serial killers. That was great. And then referencing, which is 100% true. And this just made me think of Jacoby Brissett under center throwing that pass, which was open, and people all losing their shit, that he goes, it's either shit house or, I thought he said castle, but to me, shithouse or penthouse made the most sense, because that's exactly what it is. Every time you do a 4th down call or you do a trick play, and there are only 2 answers. It's either it was the best call ever or you're joke. Now, the other part with that I thought was really true was when he referenced Andy Reid and said, he referenced the ring around.
Andy Reid can do that.
Yes, that's 100% true.
Yes.
Andy Reid can do that. I can't. That was awesome, because that's
I agree.
1,000% right. Nobody's going to sit there and really get on Andy Reid. I mean, look how many years it took. Look how bad of a year it took for Bill Belichick to actually really get criticized. He had an awful year with the Patriots. You don't get that when you're Kevin Stefanski or some of these other coaches. And I'm not suggesting that Kevin Stefanski has earned that credibility. I am curious for people who listen to this and go, if you put yourself in the shoes of what if Andy Reid was your coach and they did that, would you react the same way? Or would you inherently go, well, Andy Reid's really smart and I know he knows what he's doing. Right. Is there any element where we are sort of, I understand the desperation to win and desperation to compete, desperation to win a Super Bowl, but I can't help but think that we are at times insane when it comes to our immediate reactions, because what's funny is like the Amari Cooper play. What happened in that game? The Browns won. They dominated.
I know. You forget about that.
So yeah, you look at the Jets game, you go, yeah, it's a disaster. And look, I work with a head coach, and he says the exact same things. You never forget those games.
Yeah.
In his words, it's always, I never forget the bad stuff, which is 100% true. It's going to stay with him forever. But it is funny that like you get into some of these things, the answer is, oh, these horrible plays, and on some of them, it had no impact. The Browns won. And you sort of forget that, and you get lost in this stuff. But yeah, like I said, I don't know if Kevin Stefanski needs to essentially just have a fireside chat every week or every couple weeks to sort of like talk to people, and like, don't take calls, just don't. But if he needs to sort of just talk people through what he's doing, because it does help to give insight. So again, you're not having the very angry radio host explain for him and do all this other stuff. That type of stuff is very helpful. Now, again, if they start out the season 0-2, none of this is going to matter. But
yeah, it won't matter.
It was very interesting to hear it. Like I said, 45 minutes. I clicked on the thing and I was like, wow, this is really long. And then I looked it up, how long it was. I would have never guessed that he was going to be on that long. And it was great from start to finish. So yeah, this was a very busy week. The fact that we had to delay it 2 days only added more stuff to talk about, which is interesting. We will be back next week to talk. We will be in the tampering period at that point. We will be getting a hint on where things are going. Some point in the next couple of days, the Browns are going to restructure some contracts and create that cap space, and we're getting a better idea of what's going on. All of this is going to help us shape where the Browns are really going to need to go in the draft, or want to go in the draft, and all those type of things. But this offseason has flown by, for me anyway. It has gone really, really fast. And all of a sudden we're right into it, of seeing where this team's going to go, getting a sense of how things are going to go from here on out. And they're going to make a quick impression to say how good, we should feel instantly, but we will be here to cover it. By all means, please tell a friend, subscribe, all that good stuff. We'll be back, and we look forward to doing this next week.